So hello everyone, welcome to the DTS 3D training webinar. This should be a short 30-minute training webinar where I will try to cover the clinical tips on how to use the DTS 3D software to perform a quick 3D wax up, 3D mock-up, which can then be tried in the patient's mouth. So that's the opening screen of the software. Let us start by uploading the patient's upper jaw scan. So as we can see, that's the upper jaw scan. Basic scan controls are on mouse left click. So you can just press the left click of the mouse and 3D rotate the scan. And if you have to just scroll the scan, you can press the center wheel of the mouse and you can scroll the scan. To zoom in and zoom out, you can just use the center wheel of the mouse. So these are the basic functions. At this stage, I am good enough to just upload the upper jaw scan. I'm not carrying out any trims. And let us also make sure that is the patient's lower jaw scan and we will upload it. Again, making sure it is the proper scan and I've uploaded the same. In today's webinar, we will upload the patient's DTS 2D project. That's the smile design which has been designed using the DTS Pro program. Just a point here is you cannot directly upload photographs to overlay on the scan. You first need to upload them in DTS Pro. We are not going to discuss about the DTS Pro protocol here today, but just to re-emphasize the fact that once you've uploaded the photograph in the DTS Pro program, you save it as a project file, and then you can upload the DTS 2D project file here. So that's the upper jaw scan, lower jaw scan, and the DTS 2D project file. This is the only data that I need to carry out a 3D smile design for this patient. Let us go to the next step. As we can see, this is the alignment step here. Just follow the instructions which are seen on the right side of the screen here. It asks me to mark the buccal cusp of the molar. Now, it doesn't really matter which molar buccal cusp do you mark, but just as a tip here, it is always better to mark the buccal cusp tip of the last molar which is present. So in this case, it's the third molar. You need to follow this particular sequence. Do not change the sequence. So this is the buccal cusp tip of the molar. Point 2, it then asks me to mark the canine tip. Point 3, it asks me to mark the incisal edge. So here, of course, there is a diastema. So I may choose to mark any one of the two incisal edges. Canine cusp tip on the other side. And again, the buccal cusp tip of the molar. So that's my occlusal plane. This is a mandatory step. You need to mark these 5 points here. When we press done, as you can see, it shows us this alignment template. You can just refine the alignment here. Make sure the occlusal plane sits on this template. The two yellow center lines, that's the midline of the patient. Just make it as accurate as practically possible. An important step here is this blue arrow should always be pointing in an occlusal direction. As you can see here, when I flip, the blue arrow doesn't point occlusally. Make sure this always points in the occlusal direction. That is all you need to do in alignment. Looks pretty okay. Now, just a tip here is, as you can see, we have marked these 5 points from the molar cusp tip to the canine to the midline to the other side canine and molar cusp tips. In the next upgrades, which we will be releasing, there is some artificial intelligence which is built in the software. So all these points will be used for a more precise tooth positioning. So the software will give you a better proposal based on these 5 points. So as the software keeps on getting upgraded and updated, these shall be shared with you. Now, once the alignment is done, I go to the next screen again, next step. where it asks me to match the image with the scan. So what I do is just follow the instructions on the bottom of the screen. Again, each screen here has small help tips which are present. I mark 2 points on the image. So in this particular 2D project, I have uploaded both the extraoral as well as the retracted image. That is why you are able to see both of them. And 2 corresponding points on the scan. And then we press check fit. As you can see, it is well overlaid. You can just left click and do a better positioning. Now remember here that you're trying to match 2D images with 3D scan data. So you will not get a 100% match, but the idea is to get as accurate a fit as practically possible. And the anterior part fit is more important because here you are going to show the patients a 3D visualization of teeth on their smile. And this is generally, since we are dealing with aesthetics, it is generally the front part. So try to get a better fit, as better fit as possible, particularly in the anterior region. So as you can see, that's my scan. Now there are certain basic controls. You can just move the scan using these two blue control points. And if you have to bodily move the scan, you have to click anywhere on the scan and press the mouse. But if you have to rotate the scan, you can press outside the scan area and move the mouse in the desired direction. So the basic controls, either you can move these blue control points, or you can move the scan, or if you have to rotate the scan, just press anywhere outside the scan area and move. That is all that is needed here. And my alignment is done. Now, as you can see, the design screen is now open. So you can just click next, or you can directly go to the design screen. There are two basic design screens. That's the split screen and the dynamic design screen. As you can see on the split screen, you will get, these are all static screens. So I cannot change the view. These are fixed views, but you get a constant view on each screen. Now this is my 2D design, which was planned in DTS Pro. So what I have shown to the patient in DTS Pro, I have done certain simulations. I have done some outlines there. So as you can see, the underlying, that's the, if I just press the show how tab, that's the patient's scan. That is a new outline of, that is a new position of teeth, which I have planned in 2D. And I will try to place my new teeth shells based on the position of these outlines. So you can navigate from extraoral image to retracted image. You may choose to only visualize the maxilla or mandible. You can change the transparency of each scan as you want. You may switch off the templates, or you may even switch off the midlines and the smile frames. So for now, these outlines are good enough for me. I will press the show height tab again, and let us insert some new teeth shells on this patient's existing teeth. Now, one of my personal favorite libraries here is Square 2. Let's see, looks pretty good. So I'm just trying to fit in front 6 teeth. So for now, I don't want to see the mandible. The maxilla is good enough for me. Now, once you have changed the position of a particular tooth in this library. For example, now I press shift and left click. Suppose I have just moved, I'm just trying to show this for illustration purposes. Once say I have fixed the position of a single tooth. If I change the library, the new tooth will be added in that particular position. So once you have fixed a single tooth library position, you can easily navigate between different tooth shapes and shells. So you can choose between the FDI and US nomenclature, whatever works for you. For now, I will just undo, and yes, that was it. Okay. The first thing that I'm doing is I will press Control A, or I can just press Select All and get a broad positioning. Now you see, because of this split screen, you are able to see the position of teeth in all views. So this is a clinically a very helpful screen, because when you are working on 3D, sometimes when you change the position of teeth in one view, it also totally changes in the other view, and that is not within your control. But because of the split screen, you are able to check the position in different views on the same screen. So that's my, I can press shift and left click, or I can directly left click. So I'm just trying to first, again, we can just follow the guidelines that we have planned in 2D. We cannot precisely follow. As you can see, the centrals here are wider, but also we need to understand this is a pre-prep mock-up. So we haven't touched the patient's teeth. We are just trying to add something on patient's existing teeth. While these white templates are ideal outlines that we want in the patient's mouth. So that is good enough. Looks fine. Of course, we need to make sure here that the entire labial surface of the teeth is covered. Make sure you get a as precise fit as possible in the design screen itself, so that you don't have to do a lot of changes in the sculpting tools. We don't need to change the shape of teeth. So try to get the best possible fit here. I don't want to make the mock-up too bulky. At the same time, I need to make sure that the buccal surfaces of teeth are fully covered. So I'm just trying to do a quick positioning. So as you can see, I have tried to, so my centrals probably should come here. That's my laterals. Canine probably can go a little up. Right. Now I can just go to the dynamic screen, do a proper arrangement of teeth here. So here I can just shift and left click, or I can just directly right click and press select. As you can see on this screen, there are these particular controls. The square control will proportionately scale. So it will zoom in or it will scale proportionately. These long arrows will just move in that particular direction, and the short arrows will stretch in that particular direction. So for example, when I'm using this short arrow here, it is stretching the tooth labially. This is stretching the tooth incisally, right? So I can just use my, and those curves of course will change the orientation or rotation of the shell in that particular plane. You can even carry out symmetric functions. So when I right click and press symmetry, so if I change the position of a tooth, the other side tooth will also symmetrically change. So when I manipulate this, lateral incisor, my other lateral incisor will also get equally manipulated. So if you want, you can just press the symmetry function. You can also design shells on one side and then mirror them on the other side. Say, for example, if I right click and I can just mirror. So of course, the shape will look a little different because of the positioning, but you can mirror one side on the other if you want to. For now, I will switch the symmetry function off. Looks reasonably okay to me. Of course, I will need a little more modification of placement. Now, for example, this part of the tooth surface, now I can of course cover it up. So I can stretch and move it a little buckly if I don't want to add, or I can even go to the next screen, sculpting screen, which we will see in the next slide, and just add a little bit of tooth material there. We can even slightly stretch this. Good enough. Looks a little too, and just push it in. Pretty good. So that is about it. Almost a proper positioning. I can maybe make this a little stretched on the outside so that it now let us make the upper shell slightly transparent and see where the gingival levels are. I don't want them to extend too much gingivally, so I want them flush with the gingival margins. Don't intend to carry out gingivectomy, so that's my packs up for 6th teeth. Of course, uh, this is just a perspective. You might want to go into more details and do a better designing. I'm just trying to show you the perspective of how to carry out a quick clinical design. That's my 6 veneer mock-up design, which is carried out for the patient. Looks pretty good from all planes. Let us do a final, maybe some spacing here, which can, so I want to maybe make it a little broad there, and come back here. Looks fine. Right, let's go back to the split screen. Looks pretty good. As you can see, I've tried to follow the incisal edge position of my 2D design. Right. The moment I push this tooth in, it gives me, it exposes the patient's labial surface. So instead of moving this in, I would want to move the other one slightly out to match in position. If you have to select multiple veneers, you can just press the shift key and click the exact number, or you can just press Ctrl A and that will select all the veneers. Looks pretty good to me, right? You can just add some color to the shell if you want to. Say for now, I want to make the scan a little pink in color so that it looks like the gingiva. And to the shells, maybe I can add some. So these are all shades for reference. They are not actual shades. In the next updates, these colors will be more realistic, natural tooth-like. So you will have a little reflections coming in. So it makes the visibility of the teeth shells a little better, makes it more realistic in 3D view for the patients to visualize. And I will even switch off the templates. So that's a new position of my teeth. So original teeth and new teeth shells. This is something which can be shown to the patient before you go ahead for designing. That's the dynamic screen view. We'll just press done, and we don't want to export it right now. We might carry out certain changes in the sculpting screen. So I've just saved it for now, and let us go to the sculpt screen. Now on sculpt screen, we can do finer refinements of the teeth shape. Now try to keep the sculpting tools to the bare minimum. We do not want to change this original texture of teeth. So for now, I want to hide the mandible. Let us just work on the maxilla. Of course, you can just see anything that is seen through the mandible will be occlusal interference. So of course, that can be removed using the remove tool. But for now, let's see. So maybe I will want to move. So I will just right click to select and then just move. With the move tool, you can change the shape of teeth if you want your incisal edge to be a little more prominent and not rounded. If he's a male patient, or if is a female, you want a little roundish edge, so you can modify that as well. I want to make it a little prominent. As you can see, I'm not doing a lot of changes here. I want to maintain the anatomy of teeth. So I've just used my move tool. If you have to add something, you can just add. You can control the size of the brush, plus you can control the intensity. Whenever you are using add tool, always keep the intensity low and the brush size high. So for example, if I have to add something here, the intensity, I will always keep it slightly less and the brush size more, so that it is evenly distributed and you don't get a projection at a particular area. If you feel the texture is a bit too coarse, you can slightly smoothen. Again, I will keep the intensity bare minimum and the brush size high. I can just right click, and as you can see, I don't suggest to use the smooth tool quite a bit, because it is the beauty of the characterizations. Of course, if it's a female patient and you want smoother textures, you can of course make the textures a little smooth with the smooth tool. But again, if the tooth library is already smooth to start off with, don't use the smooth tool, because sometimes it might spoil the smoothness. So only if you have a library which has got a coarse texture do we suggest to use the smooth tool. Otherwise, you may choose not to use it. And if you want to remove, I will just use the remove tool. Right, again, I can choose to keep the intensity slightly high. Make sure your brush size is normal, so that when you remove, you should not spoil the shape of the shell. So you can just remove whatever you want to. That is it. So that is the basic tools of the software. Right, let me see if I see the scan the mandible. Whatever is there in my bite, at least that much I can remove for sure. Right, so that's the basic tool functions. As you can see there, when I use the remove tool, it's slightly spoiled the outer surface of my teeth. So I will just undo. I will press Control Z. Why this sometimes happens is, as you can see, there is a gap in the teeth. There is some diastema, right? So when I remove material, sometimes it also removes, it changes the shape from outside because there is a gap there. So the inner and the outer surfaces are connected. So whenever there is a little gap between the teeth, just be a little more careful while using the remove tool. Or you may choose to let it stay, not use it, or you may even use the move tool instead of the remove tool in that case. So I can just sort of move if I want to, or you may just choose to let it remain the way it is. Doesn't really matter because you're just doing a mock-up here, right? In the next session, we will talk about shells. So there I will be talking a little more in detail about how do you use the remove tool. So from here on, we will just press done and export the merged model. So we can just name the project as test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It could be anything. I'll just keep it on the desktop. This will save it as a DTS 3D project. And it'll also ask me where does it want me to export the file. Very soon, we will also be having our own model builder software from where you will be able to add a model base and hollow out models before you send them for 3D printing. For now, I generally use 3D builder, which I find pretty simple to use. So I can just on the desktop, I will just export my data there. And my export has been completed. So let us see. I will just try to share my screen here and see where my file is, which I just exported. So I'll just try to share my screen. And that is my file that I just exported. This is opening in Chitubox, which is a 3D printer software. You can also open it with Mesh Mixer just to see. So that's the model which we just designed. As you can see, you can just add a base to it, either in Mesh Mixer or in Windows 3D Builder. We will just separately record a video on how do you add a base and how do you hollow out a model using a 3D Builder, which is a free software available on Microsoft Store. Windows 3D Builder, it's a very simple to use app. We will just record a small video and share so that you can just go through on how to add. As you can see, that's a nice mock-up model, STL or OBJ file that we have exported from the DTS software. And you can now then send this for 3D printing. You do a mock-up transfer. So that is about it on the basics of how do you use the DTS 3D software. I hope the webinar has been a useful experience for all of you. If you have any doubts, if you have any questions, you can just put them across on email and we will be more than happy to solve them as and when needed. There will be continuous updates and upgrades which will continue happening with the DTS 3D as well as the DTS Pro software. So we hope it becomes a part of your routine day-to-day practice. And do send us your feedback. Do send us your suggestions on any improvements that you would desire in the DTS Pro as well as the DTS 3D software. So thank you very much for your time. Have a nice day. Have a nice weekend. Thank you, everyone.